brand building really comes down to consistency and repetition. How many times, what's your reach and frequency with your message against the intended target? There is the focus of called the cognitive response model. You're just trying to move something from short-term to long-term memory. And then it gets into aided and unaided recall. But basically, how do you get someone to know who you are and then be able to say it unaided and then have the right set of beliefs that you hope they have? It's a whole constant, you know, never-ending process of trying to just be present all the time. That does not show an ROI very easily.
Hello, and welcome to Misadventures in Marketing, the flagship podcast from the American Marketing Association San Francisco chapter. I'm Steve Haney, a fractional go-to-market executive in Silicon Valley.
And I'm Peter Farrago, a high-tech marketing executive in the Bay Area. On this flagship podcast, the only podcast, Steve and I get together and talk about all things in high-tech marketing.
We're Silicon Valley early stage startup guys, so we talk about running marketing teams. We focus on early stage and our successes, our failures, what's worked for us, and what's crashed and burned. Often we invite our CMO friends and our other marketing colleagues onto the show every once in a while, and we hope to impart some wisdom along the way. It's very heartwarming. Peter, how have you been?
I've been good. Today I've got a favorite mug in my house. It is a favorite of my wife and my daughters in the household, and we fight over this mug. So
I've got my I'm very showing my flying my colors here, my San Francisco mug that I got this from Fisherman's Wharf in one of those extremely tacky, fun memorabilia shops. So this cup is probably in many houses across the Midwest and the heartland.
That's right. Along
Nobody
with
who's
Beanie
from
Babies.
San Francisco would ever buy this cup except for me.
There's so much news. The one that I thought I would focus on is Block, now led exclusively by Jack Dorsey, who used to be splitting time between Twitter before Elon Musk took over. But to be more sincere, because this is not awesome news, they just cut 4,000 people, which is about half of its workforce. But the kicker is the stock jumped by 24%. So,
wow,
a profitable growing company fires half of its employees. The reason is AI allows them to be more efficient, and Wall Street immediately rewards it. And looking at the news, one quote from a commenter was, "If Jack executes well post cut, this could become the template." Right. So for us in marketing, and go to market and whatnot, it's kind of an interesting real time case study, right? Because to me, it feels like, the question that comes to my mind is, well, what happens to a marketing team when a founder decides that AI replaces half the company, And, today we're talking about who's driving this thing, right? So, how do we, that's a brutal reality. We're always asked to do more with less, but now there's this idea that AI is going to make everybody more efficient. What I think it's really doing is it's just taking a part of a fixed budget. You're just asking it to do things that people used to do, but you're not necessarily expanding the pie.
The same thing happened when Musk took over what is now X. Massive layoffs. And there were some glitches and bumps along the way in terms of performance and servers going down and whatnot. It's been very difficult for them to put together a bunch of compelling advertising products that have been performing consistently for them. But they appear to be doing okay after these, massive layoffs. Well, to follow up to that, my bit is that, Jeff Bezos has this $30 billion fund that he has put together to buy up industrial companies that have been, mortally wounded by AI. It's called Prometheus. And I wonder if 6 months from now, Block will be one of those companies that Prometheus buys up because it's gone up in flames. Who knows? I think the way I would start off this conversation is you have to bring, as a CMO, you have to get everybody on board with the fact that you have a mission statement, you have a vision statement, you have positioning documents for your products, and these are embedded in the, hopefully they've come from the culture of the company. The brand voice, as we say, has to be embodied in landing pages, for example. But these fundamental pieces need to be in place. And then everybody needs to understand that they're all part of the marketing team, in the sense that they need to help you write blog posts. They need to go to conferences and speak. They need to appear on podcasts and do interviews with the press. And that if you don't get aligned around this at the very beginning and understanding how that's going to get executed across the board for all the different marketing programs, whether it's, a very practical lead gen campaign versus speaking at a conference, and how they're all one cloth, so to speak, then you're going to have misalignment. And that misalignment between the values, the brand, the messaging, even getting down to the visual design, then you're going to be in trouble 6, 9, 12 months down the line, because the marketing's not going to be working. And so it's like, who's driving the car?
And, this is a real dilemma with B2B SaaS in particular, because, a lot of the forcing function of the work gets into lead generation and all this stuff, but then the reality is, if you're not well known, or your brand doesn't have momentum or stand for something, it's not going to work either. So then proving that early on, or having a CEO that understands that, can be rare.
Well, and it's also important with the head of sales, right? Because again, I've been in a situation where, we put together the messaging, we know what we want to say about the product lines. And, this one head of sales said, no, I want to sell this set of products this way. And it's like, we've done all the research. We've talked to customers, you know, we've been here 2 or 3 years. You've only been here 6 months. No customer thinks about that product in that way, and they don't want to buy it. That you think it's an XYZ story. It's an ABC story. Again, if there's misalignment, if who's got the steering wheel on the car is, being fought over, um, that's where things can go bad. And it's so insidious because it's not something that you directly see. You can't measure this kind of stuff. You can't, quote, prove it. And again, especially with the kinds of companies we're in, we deal with, where 70% of the people are engineers. I mean, their whole life, who they are and how they're trained, is in numbers and zeros and ones. And, they think you've got to prove it somehow, you got to show it. But on a certain level, there's so much qualitative, so many qualitative aspects to what we do as marketers, that convincing them, like, we need to get on the same page. These need to be the messages.
Yeah, it's hard to know if you're saying the right things. I mean, I'm early stage, and it is a collaboration between, right now, I'd say, our head of sales, who's very good and comes from the domain we sell into, and is very organized, and has a pretty good feel for what resonates with customers and thinks about it with each account. And also our CEO, we sell a technical product, and our CEO is technical, and also basically drives our product roadmap and thinks about that value. So between those two guys, or among the three of us, we are able to develop that. What's been harder is the positioning, exactly how we're going to, show up and get our angle, our advantage, our edge. What are we going to lean on in terms of emphasis? It's basically talking about differentiation.
This episode of Misadventures in Marketing is brought to you by the American Marketing Association, San Francisco. AMASF is a member-run organization that has been serving the Bay Area marketing community for over 80 years. Through programs, events, workshops, and discussions that introduce the latest trends and developments in the industry, to networking events that bring together the best marketing minds in the region, AMASF diligently works to foster professional learning and career advancement opportunities for all of its members. Joining is easy. To become a member of AMASF, go to amasf.org. That's amasf.org, and click on Get Involved on the top menu, then become a member. For just $199 a year, you'll get access to events, resources, credentialed learning opportunities, and a community of fellow marketers who will help you expand your network and advance your career. The AMASF. I was at we used to call them incubators. Now we call them accelerators. Earlier this week down in Palo Alto, and I was there with a colleague, and we're teaming up on working with the startups there, and we were just telling them all this classic stuff. I mean, I know it sounds like cliched and hackneyed, but it's true. Is that your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And what that means is that you just got to get the word out there, because when you do call them for that, we call it a go to pilot, right? It's not even go to market. It's just go to pilot, where you're trying, you've got something that's working. You're trying to get those 1, 2, 3 first customers or pilot customers on board. And you want them to have heard about you before you get there. I think the only thing that matters is finding that niche and being consistent in your communications to them, so that when you get that Series B, Series C, you've got some kind of brand in the marketplace.
Brand building really comes down to consistency and repetition. How many times, what's your reach and frequency with your message against the intended target? There's the focus of moving, called the cognitive response model. You're just trying to move something from short-term to long-term memory. And then it gets into aided and unaided recall. But basically, how do you get someone to know who you are and then be able to say it without you prompting them, and have the set of associate? How do you have them know who you are unaided and then have the right set of beliefs that you hope they have? It's a whole constant, never-ending process of trying to just be present all the time. That does not show an ROI very easily.
I found a really brilliant product manager at a company that I worked at, who was just very articulate and, presented well, and he wanted to do it. And we just had him doing a bunch of videos for us. And, eventually the co-founder CTO said, you're not showing me that this stuff's working. I don't want him doing this anymore. I need him doing yada, yada, yada. I'm like, and it's just, I can't pull up some, like you said, some magic piece of paper showing that this closed 3x more deals in the last quarter because we had these videos out there. But if you don't do it, you're not making those early deposits into that, brand bank account over time.
Picking the CEO who gets it already, who you can partner with well, is probably the biggest difference. In a tough job market like this, or sometimes I just want to be part of a certain company because I love where they're going and I like that story, I like the potential, and also a lot of performance at work is up to you and how you behave. So sometimes I suspend my disbelief a little bit about I can make it work with the CEO or not. But so much of it is that I say this with a grain of salt. interviewing is a two-way process. Picking who you're going to work with for partner with, like a CEO, whether they get marketing or not, is a pretty tough rule that I reinforce. Like if I don't feel the vibe with the CEO about marketing, if it's all about like, you know, spray and pray lead gen and, there's no story, there's no craft, there's no narrative, there's no mission, we want people to believe something. If there's none of that, then it's not going to probably be a good situation.
Yeah.
And I say it with a grain of salt because it is a hard economy, and I've taken jobs when I've needed jobs, so I'm not too precious about it, and I don't have the luxury to like turn down every job. I certainly though filter very hard against that. And you may never know, but like you may have to take a risk, meaning like take that job you find out on the job, and hope that they weren't presenting something
Well,
different than who they
and
really
yeah,
are.
I think I mentioned this to you. They, especially early stage startup techs, startup CEOs who are probably engineer, co-founder, CEOs, their board is now pressuring them, oh, you got to get your marketing going. So they bring on somebody like you and me who's been doing this for a long time and understands, $0 budgets and, making the thing happen. Um, they just don't. They thought they wanted marketing, and their board said to them, "You've got to get marketing," but they really do not want to do marketing. And so this gets back to the topic that we opened up this discussion with, which was, that alignment. All right. We want to thank you, our audience, for listening. Our editors, Brian Douglas at Creative Comms and Lorenzo Fernandez Kopek at Peakbound Studio for making us look and sound great. We want to thank our marketing maven, Ian Robinson Lambert, for getting the word out. Julianne Bernalis for being our consulting producer, and Rinita Datta for driving our market research and content calendar. The Misadventures in Marketing podcast is presented by the American Marketing Association, San Francisco. Build your network, learn something new, and have some fun. Learn more at www.amasf.org. We'd also like to thank our sponsor, Workbox, for their support of Misadventures in Marketing.